Joe Biden and Donald Trump will face off in a historic 7th presidential election rematch this November. That is, barring something extraordinary happening. But the incumbent Democratic president and the former Republican president are not the only two candidates in the race. As of mid-May 2024, the field also includes 3 notable non-major party candidates, and that's before the largest third party in the entire country, the Libertarians, have even nominated their own candidate. Voter interest in alternatives to the major parties is at its highest point in 3 decades, meaning that unless there is a significant decline in support for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and others over the summer and into the fall, the influence of third-party candidates on the 2024 electoral college map will be the single most decisive factor in determining the election's outcome. Within this context, let's explore the latest polling averages to determine whether Biden or Trump has more to lose. Before we get started, please make sure to subscribe to my channel down below and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my content. My name is Ryan Guest, the founder and sole creator of Election Predictions Official. I hope you enjoy. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is polling at an average of 10.8% in Real Clear Polling's latest average assessing the full field race, with Trump, Biden, Independent Cornel West, and Green Party candidate Jill Stein included in addition to Kennedy. According to Decision Desk HQ and The Hill's average, RFK is polling at 7.6% based on a total of 148 polls. That's the lowest level of support he has held since he exited the Democratic primary and launched his own independent bid last October, down from as high as 16% around that time. Still though, 7.6% is nothing to scoff at. This would be the highest share of the vote for a non-major party presidential candidate since Ross Perot's 1996 campaign, where he received 8.3% of the vote 4 years after he received 18.9% in an effective 3-way race in 1992. Since Perot's candidacies, though, third-party and independent candidates have averaged less than 3% of the nationwide vote across the last 6 presidential elections held in the 21st century, with the highest cumulative percentage coming in the 2016 election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton at 6.1%. And even then, the highest third-party individual vote-getter in that equally contentious election cycle was Libertarian nominee Gary Johnson at 3.3%. Now, RFK Jr.'s prominent national and swing state polling numbers can mostly be attributed to the historic unpopularity of the 2 major party candidates. The latest polling average from Decision Desk HQ shows that more than 56% of the American electorate view President Joe Biden unfavorably, compared to just over 40% who view him favorably. Now, that is a net negative 16% favorability rating, which would be the lowest for a major party candidate in modern history. That being said, Donald Trump is not doing that much better. Nearly 56% of voters, again, view him unfavorably, according to DDHQ's 340 poll average, compared to 41.7% favorably. That is again a net negative 14% favorability rating. And so if it weren't for Biden's historic unpopularity, we would also be talking about how historically unpopular Trump is as well. And given the relative stability of these ratings over the past year, there hasn't been that much movement, and the fact that there are very, very few people out there who don't already have a strong opinion either way about Biden or Trump, it is likely that this rematch will at least produce a third-party vote share similar to 2016, the only other time in the 21st century in which a majority of voters held unfavorable opinions of both candidates, that being Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. So far, that has seemingly been worrying Democrats more so than Republicans, at least up to this point, and I think that's for good reason. Remember that in the 2016 presidential race, then Green Party nominee Jill Stein infamously drew enough votes away from Hillary Clinton in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan to help Donald Trump win all 3 states and thereby receive enough electoral votes to be elected president. Had Clinton won those 3 states, she would have been elected the 45th president. Now, Clinton lost Wisconsin by 23,000 votes, where Stein received 31,000 votes. The Democrat also fell short in Pennsylvania by 44,000 votes, where Stein received 50,000. And finally, in Michigan, 2016's closest contest, Clinton lost to Trump by only 11,000 votes, and Stein received the support of 51,000 voters in the state. Had even just 90% of Green Party voters in those states cast their ballots for Clinton rather than Stein, which wouldn't have been surprising since the Green Party represents liberal policy views, Trump would never have become president. And that should give anyone on either side of the political aisle enough reason to recognize the significance of third-party bids, especially given that in the 2024 election, we are expecting it to be just as closely contested as 2016. And keep in mind as well that Stein only received about 1% of the national popular votes in 2016, while in 2024 we're talking about third parties potentially reaching double digits. So on that note, according to the latest polling data from Decision Desk HQ and Real Clear Politics, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is drawing an average of 3.9% of Trump support and exactly 5% of Biden support in full field surveys. I got these numbers by comparing Biden and Trump's head-to-head vote shares and DDHQ and RCP's averages with their vote shares and the race averages that do include RFK Jr. and other third-party candidates. Currently, Trump's average support between DDHQ and RCP is 45.4%, while Biden's is 44.8%, a margin difference of 0.6%. But with Kennedy and other third-party candidates included, Trump's vote share drops by 3.9% to 41.5%, and Biden's by 5% to 39.8%, widening the margin between the two candidates to 1.7%. Using these numbers, we can roughly estimate that for every 1% of the national popular vote that Kennedy receives in this election, Biden will lose 0.56% of his support, while Trump will lose 0.44%. Now that's not that big of a difference, unless of course Kennedy receives a very large share, in which case the Biden campaign should become increasingly concerned, as for example, let's say that Kennedy receives exactly 10% of the national popular votes. Biden would theoretically lose 5.6% and Trump 4.4%. That 1.2% difference is larger than Biden's 2020 margins of victory in Wisconsin, 0.6%, Pennsylvania, 1.17%, Georgia, 0.2%, and Arizona, 0.3%. If all four had voted Republican, he would not have won the election. And even if, let's say, for example, the difference in vote share loss between Biden and Trump due to RFK was only 0.7%, and therefore Biden still holds Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona alone would still be enough to secure Trump exactly 270 electoral votes, the exact number he would need to be elected to a second non-consecutive term in the White House. So with all of that being said, I should note that independent and third-party candidates have historically underperformed their early polling numbers by the time of the election. And we're already seeing this happen as RFK is starting to dip lower and lower as we get closer to November. A big challenge for pollsters in this circumstance is the fact that respondents can actually be pretty poor predictors of their own behavior. Just because someone says that they are planning to vote for a long-shot candidate months out from Election Day does not actually mean that they will end up voting for a candidate that they know cannot win once the ballot is actually in their hands. No third-party candidate has received a single electoral vote via the Electoral College in more than 50 years, and America has not elected a non-major party presidential candidate since George Washington. And keep in mind again that in 2016, Trump and Clinton were both extremely unpopular, and because of this, the combined support of the two most prominent third-party candidates, Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, often hovered around 10% in mid-election year polling, very similar to how it is now. However, in the end, Johnson and other third-party candidates collectively received just about 6% of the popular votes. We've seen this exact phenomenon happen time and time again throughout history. Another factor to keep in mind is that it is harder to get on the ballot in some states than in others, and some individual third-party candidacies can generate unique levels of support in some states or regions while being virtually non-existent elsewhere. In my data-driven 2024 presidential election forecast, which you can check out for yourself at electionpredictionsofficial.com, third parties are currently projected to combine for 7.7% of the national popular votes, but the vote share in individual states ranges from as low as 6% all the way up to 12%. These differences are based on patterns from recent history. The state with the highest average third-party vote share since 2000 is Utah at 8.2%. Unsurprising, as that average is boosted by independent Evan McMullen's anti-Trump Republican candidacy in 2016. He got 21.3% in his home state of Utah that year, by far his best performance anywhere in the country, and also by far the best single third-party candidates in any state this century. Though that being said, the third-party vote share in Utah was also higher than the national average in each of the other 5 elections this century as well. So while 2016 was fluky and abnormally high, third-party performance in Utah has consistently been above average over the last 2 decades. More broadly, third parties do tend to perform better in states in the West. Along with Utah, there is Alaska, Colorado, New Mexico, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, just to name a few. The logic here actually makes a lot of sense. The 2 consistently balloted third parties, the Libertarians and the Greens, have greater ideological appeal to West Coast liberals and rural Westerners. This data also aligns with a regional breakdown in a Marist poll from earlier this year that had Kennedy doing best out west at 22%, while his Midwest support was very similar at 19%, with the South and Northeast lagging behind at 13% and 14% respectively. Again, this makes sense as states in the Deep South do dominate the bottom of the list in terms of low third-party vote shares since 2000. In fact, 9 of the 10 lowest third-party vote shares in my forecast are in states that were part of the Confederacy during the Civil War, with the only exception being Oklahoma, effectively still a southern state. Of greatest interest to us, though, as election analysts, as well as the Democratic and Republican parties and their operatives themselves, is how third parties tend to perform in the key battlegrounds. 7 states were decided by 3 points or less in 2020: Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Georgia and North Carolina, down here in the South, are among the 10 lowest performing third-party states, while Pennsylvania and Michigan are also on the lower end of the average. In fact, Pennsylvania is just a couple of hundredths of a point from being in the bottom 10, while Wisconsin is basically right at the average, and Arizona is a little bit above average. Of these core swing states, Nevada has had the highest average third-party vote share in recent elections, which is primarily driven by the fact that the state of Nevada offers its voters a, quote, none of these candidates option, which has gotten at least 0.4% of the votes in every election this century, and that's roughly how much higher Nevada's third-party voting is compared to the rest of the country on average. The fact that Arizona and Nevada are a little higher than average also just fits in with them being Western states, given the higher levels of support that we see recent third-party candidates get in this region. So, while there are several states with a recent track record of clearly higher than average third-party performances, the states most likely to decide the 2024 election are not really among them. That doesn't mean the third-party votes in these states are unimportant. It just means that we shouldn't necessarily expect third-party candidates to do better in them than they do nationally. It may also be that the argument that voting third-party is a wasted vote is perhaps most persuasive in these top battlegrounds where votes simply just mean more. Now, with all of this data in mind, let's shift over to this 2024 Electoral College map, where I've already filled in the states leaning strongly toward one party based on my own current ratings using a combination of polling, trends in past results, industry consensus, demographic data, and all kinds of more data points that, again, you can check out at electionpredictionsofficial.com. Safe states, the darkest shade of red or blue, are projected to be decided by a margin greater than 12 points in either direction. Likely states by 7 to 12 points, and lean states by 2 to 7 points. The 6 key battlegrounds, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, are the states that we'll be focusing on today as we take a look at whether Donald Trump or Joe Biden stand to lose more from third-party bids. Starting in the Midwest, specifically the upper Rust Belt trio of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I call them a trio because they voted for the same candidate as one another in each of the last 9 elections. They've backed Democrats in all but one of them, that being 2016 when Trump sweeped all 3, proving decisive as had Clinton held them, she would have defeated Trump. Then in 2020, Biden flipped them all back into his column, but had Trump held them in that election, he would have again been reelected. As we briefly discussed earlier, all 3 states' average third-party vote shares since the start of the 21st century do rank below the national average. Wisconsin ranks 32nd at 1.52%, Michigan 37th at 1.43%, and Pennsylvania 42nd at 1.3%. According to my own forecast, which uses 2024 polling data in addition to past non-major party vote shares, third parties are projected to receive 7.3% of the vote in Wisconsin in 2024, 7.2% in Michigan, and 6.9% in Pennsylvania. And so again, building off the same formula that we went over earlier, where for every 1% Kennedy receives, Trump loses 0.44% and Biden 0.56%, let's assume for the sake of the argument that those splits hold up when including all the other candidates. Since third parties are projected to receive 7.3% in Wisconsin, Biden is expected to lose 4.1% of his support, according to this formula, compared to Trump losing 3.2%. That's a difference of about 0.9%, which is about 0.3 of a percentage point larger than Biden's margin of victory was in 2020 in Wisconsin. And assuming that the national environment in 2024 is more favorable to Trump than 4 years ago, given consistent polling data suggesting exactly that, and the fact that Biden is simply much less popular than he was in 2020, I'm going to place Wisconsin in the tilt Republican category. The difference would be similar, of course, in Michigan, since third parties are projected to receive 7.2% there, according to my forecast. Biden would lose exactly 4% of his support to Trump's 3.2%. That's a 0.8% difference that, in my opinion, would not quite be enough to flip Michigan into the Republican column. Instead, it'll go down as a toss-up. I am a firm believer that Trump will need a lot of things to go right, a lot more things, to flip Michigan in 2024, after I voted for Biden by 3 points in 2020, and has seen a string of strong Democratic performances down the ballot in races since then as well. Michigan is fundamentally a bluer state than Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania, which, by the way, also goes down as a toss-up. Biden would lose 3.9% of his support in this scenario compared to Trump's 3.0% in Pennsylvania. Again, a difference of around 8 to 9/10 of a percentage point. It was Biden plus 1.2 in 2020, and Biden's polling numbers against Trump have been better in Pennsylvania than in most other battlegrounds, though it is a perennially purple state, and if Trump really does end up improving on his national margin by several points, I could see it potentially flipping to Trump, of course with the help of RFK. As for the 3 Sunbelt states, Nevada ranks 12th among all U.S. states in average third-party vote share here in the 21st century, while Arizona ranks 22nd and Georgia all the way down in 44th. The projected non-major party vote shares, according to my forecast, range from 8.7% in Nevada to 8% on the dot in Arizona, all the way down to 6.6% in Georgia. And therefore, the polling calculations here find that Trump would gain on Biden by 1.1% in Nevada, 1% in Arizona, and 0.8% in Georgia as a result of RFK's impact on the race. With that in mind, I am going to place all 3 states in the tilt Republican category. At this point, I think it would be foolish to give Biden better than 50-50 odds in any of these states, as Trump leads by more than 5 percentage points in all 3, according to Decision Desk HQ's latest polling averages, and the fact that Georgia only went to Biden by 0.2% in 2020 and Arizona by 0.3%, while Nevada has shifted towards Republicans relative to the nation in recent cycles. So, in the race to 270 electoral votes, Trump is projected to win 278 and thereby secure election to the White House, compared to Biden's 226. He would flip Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada en route to a victory here, benefiting from the incumbent candidacy of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., pulling more support from Biden than from himself, according to the latest polling averages. Let me know in the comments what you think of this map and the points made in this video. I appreciate all positive or negative comments. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.